the Mobile Workforce Podcast. Industry insights, construction perspective.
Hello again, this is Mike Merrill with the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm super excited to bring another great episode to you this week with a conversation I had with Mr. John Lenker and Assaf Arie from the Lenker Group. These gentlemen are experts in the construction space and helping contractors to scale and grow their business. I think you're going to love this one, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Well, welcome to the show, John and Assaf. Really excited to have you on the conversation today.
We're excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Same here.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, obviously, we have some real interest in hearing from you gentlemen on your expertise in the area of contractors being able to grow and scale their businesses. That's something that I think most companies face as a challenge, especially when they're startup or maybe it's a family-run business and they want to really grow things so they have a legacy or expand. And, what can you tell us about the best way that contractors can address the issue of growth and scaling?
Well, let me start and then I'll pass the ball to Assaf. I think, you mentioned a couple of things that it's very different. If you're starting from scratch or if you're inheriting a business, all the kind of givens at the beginning have a lot to do with what you do next. So, I would say that, the most important thing to kind of get aligned in your mind right from the beginning is to really get into the right frame of mind for why you're in business, what your overarching goals are for being in business, and to have a basic game plan for getting to your goals. And, in our practice, we're like a boutique management consulting firm with an emphasis on marketing. Our job is to kind of evaluate these game plans when clients come to us and kind of recraft them into something that's based on our experience that will most likely lead to those outcomes. So step one, whatever your starting point, get into the right mindset that you're not just in business to do a bunch of stuff, do jobs, whatever your trade is, but you're in business to provide a service that leads to a profit margin that will let you build capital and grow over time. Get in that business growth mindset and understand that you have to have a really good handle on your situation, the challenges that you're facing, the audiences that you're trying to reach out to, the people that you're trying to draw into your organization to help, do the work, and a basic game plan for getting from A to B to C to D. So that's step one.
Well stated, Assaf. What do you think?
I would say it's a combination of a few things. So I would say have a plan and have a team. And the team have come with an art trick, right? Because you can't have a full team in day one, but it needs to be built into your plan, right? So have a plan. How do you go from A to Z with all the steps in between? And also know part of the plan, have your team build through that, right? Acknowledge your deficits, the things you're not good at, the things you don't like to do, and incorporate into the plan when you're going to make those critical hires. And I have a feeling that later in the show, we'll talk about the pain points of when those critical hires come in. So no spoiler alerts there.
Awesome. Well, very well stated by both of you. It's a nice base foundation for this conversation. It reminds me, I was thinking as you're both talking, as contractors who the market that we serve pretty heavily, and they all start with a plan. There's engineering, there's pre-planning, there's all the estimating, all these budgets, things that really allow you to be successful ultimately. And it sounds like you're recommending that contractors take that same approach with their business itself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Without a plan, the chance of them collapsing is, dramatically increasing.
So what are some things to focus on as somebody starts to gather their thoughts and put this plan together? Are there some critical steps in the process or things that people should use as tools or kind of not really a shortcut, but a method to derive, okay, here's what I really need to focus on specifically?
Well, absolutely. I think, let's just take the scenario of you're starting a business. Maybe you've been a long-term employee. with some kind of, contractor of some kind, and you feel like you're really good at your skill and you're kind of sick of taking orders and you feel like you want to strike out on your own. That can be, there can be some good things that are motivating that. It can also be a very dangerous thing if you haven't properly understood your own skills and competencies and what is your real ability to actually lead a business plan and lead and grow a business. So there are a number of things that you need to know up front. One is, what is the competitive landscape that you're actually entering into? I mean, other than the fact that you want to have your own business and, do it for myself rather than the man or whatever, other than that kind of motivation, do you really see a need in the marketplace that's going unmet? Or are you in a marketplace that's super saturated and everybody's competing on price and, there's a high barrier to entry, maybe big capital requirements for equipment and what have you? Or, have you really seen something that's like, wow, I can specialize in something, or I built a skill that's unique that gives me a competitive edge. But, rather than just kind of have a loose general idea of what that is, it's really good to start to kind of audit. And I use that word deliberately. It's a very careful examination. Think of like setting up a big grid, right? And kind of the columns of the grid are all the different competitors, including yourself. And the rows are like all the different kinds of areas that tend to differentiate a company, the different kinds of things that we offer and do, the values that the business is built on, certain, X factor that you may have, and start, going to the websites of your competitors and start kind of scraping this information and kind of find a place to plug it into the grid and start to look for patterns, look for holes, things that nobody's really addressing really well. I'll give you one example. Oftentimes in the trades, people don't give any attention to the audience of potential employees or workers. They're so focused on, hey, I need to get new business, that they don't really spend a lot of time kind of, dressing themselves up in a way that really is going to be appealing to workers, right? So one thing you could do is look at how do all the competitors speak to that audience? Do they act like they care? Do they understand that, hey, we're in a competitive job market and, I better have some good reasons why somebody would want to say yes to come work for me versus somebody else, especially if I'm starting out, especially if there are a lot of unknowns. But regardless of what stage you're at, this kind of audit and analysis should be done if you are looking to start to establish goals. You need to understand the competitive landscape. You need to understand your audiences and what their needs are. And you need to start to think through what differentiates you to the degree that there's a really compelling reason for you to be in the marketplace as a player.
Get complete project visibility with WorkMax Insight. WorkMax Insight uses predictive metrics to measure trends in your project so you can know exactly where your project stands, how it is advancing, and what needs to be completed to stay on schedule. Get real-time project updates with WorkMax Insight today.
And I love that you brought up, John, the idea of surrounding yourself with some teammates and people that can help you to grow and scale that business, because winning one big job isn't going to do anything but get you one big job and, maybe a little extra capital. But at the end of the day, you don't have a great team to help you win the next and the next and the next big job, then you're ultimately really on a short-term plan to failure, I would say.
I would even comment on that. You win a big job and you're a small contractor, your chance of failure just tremendously increased. You're taking a lot of risk, a lot more than you probably should take, and you just look at the job and you see the profit margin at the end, and you're forgetting there's a long way of getting there. And those are very dangerous for smaller contractors, those bigger jobs. And I've seen contractors fail because of those jobs.
Yeah, learning curve and the opportunity cost, right, that you're investing in that you may never even use again, right?
Right.
Lots of great wisdom here. So as a company works towards establishing those goals, putting that plan together, establishing their value in the market, a gap that they hope to fill, and start thinking about the type of team they need to have set up. Are there any other quick tips or best practices that you would also list off to really get people thinking in the right mind frame?
There are a couple of things that are fundamental. Okay. The first thing is that we tend to be very myopic as individuals, meaning we just want to focus on one thing at a time. We think, well, the first thing is I need this, and then after that, I'll go and pursue this other thing, and then the next thing. The problem with that is that in reality, there's a lot of different gears that need to kind of be working at the same time when you start a business. This is one reason why Assaf's advice is so critical, that, if you try to take on too much at once, you multiply the probability of failing, of having some kind of failure point, right? So you want to make sure that the number of gears you're working with are realistic based on your current situation and your revenue needs and all those kinds of things. So know that it's not ever going to just be about one thing that you need to focus on. There's a handful of things that you need to focus on, and you need to be really sure you've thought through those things, or one of those things is going to end up, coming and biting you, in the butt. The second thing that is super fundamental, and Assaf will have a lot to say about all this stuff, is that businesses starting out think, I don't want to be too fancy, and I don't need to think about things like my brand. I'll just kind of sketch out a logo and pick some colors and, buy some kind of, a $25 WordPress website and just kind of, put something out there. And the problem with that is, and this is one of the most common mistakes, is people really fail to understand the importance of brand, even when you're just starting out. And the reason is that no matter how big you are, every person that you're reaching out to and making contact with, you're asking them to enter into a relationship with you. And in order for them to enter into that relationship, they have to come to understand something about you that is worth knowing. And they need to come to believe that what it is you're saying that you can do is legitimate, that you're going to be able to deliver on it. So really, at the core of what branding is, it's what people believe about you. Okay, it's the space that people have and hold in their brains that holds an opinion about the comprehensibility and the legitimacy of your value proposition. Meaning the thing that you say that you can do better than somebody else for any given job or any given situation. So kind of putting that off and not thinking through what you want people to believe about you, or why they should believe in you, or even what to believe about you. Putting that off too far can leave the marketplace really confused about why should I care about this company? At first we get a little excited because our first few jobs when we start a business, based on a reputation, we've got friends who know friends, those maybe initial projects come kind of easy, people want to see us succeed. But as we build some traction and start to spread our wings a little bit, people care less and less about you and why they should say yes to you. And so you need to pretty early on start to develop, kind of like the embryo growing in the mother's womb. The cells are dividing, and step by step, the case that you're making for yourself is growing, it's becoming more substantive, it's becoming more intricate. So, those two things. One, it's going to be more than one thing you got to deal with at a time. And number two, thinking through your value proposition and your branding, your brand identity, is not something you should put off to the future. It's something you should deal with right away.
Yeah, I love that. And it also makes me think about, you having that why statement, or that reason, your purpose, whatever it is, that needs to tie into why someone should choose you over someone else. Whatever drives you is maybe the advantage that somebody could have in hiring you to do their work, because maybe it will resonate with them if they know what that is, and if you know what that is, right?
Exactly.
And I would say too that you can use the brand as a goal setting tool too. As you go through the branding exercise, you decide of how you want to be perceived in the world, which helps shape the future of your business, because you're going to act in the way that you're presenting yourself. I'm going to add a couple more things to what John said, And again, like John said, something very important. There's a lot of things that are important, and it's rarely one thing, right? For business failure or success. But I would say early on, critical is think about the technology you're going to use, because it's hard to change technology later. So make sure you spend ample time early on to figure out the technology tools, especially in the trades when there's a lot of CRM trade specific. So you want to make sure you're locking yourself into a tool that's going to manage your CRM, your customer relationship management, and your production and flows internally smoothly, and you fully bought into it, right? So because that will start from you later, the usability of that tool between other members of the team as your team grow, right? So technology early on, if you push it for later, it'll be harder to implement and very hard to switch between tools. So consider that early on. Even if you think you're too small for that, then a spreadsheet is enough for you. Figure out what the tool you want to use later, because spreadsheet can only get you so far if you want to scale quickly and efficiently, right? Spreadsheet is a phenomenal tool, but for scalability, spreadsheet for most people will slow them down. And number two is, when you shape the business early on, try to shape it with the customer in mind and not yourself in mind. A lot of the people in the trade, it's about them and the work that they do, and they forget that someone needs to buy the work they do. So shape the business and the values around your customer and not around yourself. Because I've bought some businesses that were shaped about themselves, and I bought them for cheap because they didn't have any brand reputation. They were just, a lot of payables and people that know how to do really good work, but they let the ego drive themselves and their business. So I got an opportunity to get them into our values and get equipment for 30 cents on a dollar and, really good labor force. So shape the business around the customer, not around yourself.
Well stated. It makes me think of, we've all had an old car that we loved and we had an emotional connection to, and it wasn't the shiniest or the best or maybe the most expensive, but there was a connection to that. And it just made me think of that when you're talking about the customers. I was a builder myself as well. I grew up in the trades before, starting the software company. And I think you gentlemen are both really onto something there with connecting to that customer and having that value proposition in mind and why they're going to have a better experience. That journey of building this structure is going to be a better experience for them. When at the end of the day, maybe it's all sticks and bricks the same, might look very similar. The plans and the details are very similar, but if they feel better about that experience, they're going to love you as a builder versus maybe, okay, well, I really didn't like my builder, but the building's, does what we need, right?
Well, I want to kind of make it practical what Assaf said about knowing the audience. Okay. I have a stake in a millwork company, and who are we calling on, right? We're calling on general contractors that have, in most cases, large scale contracts with major hotels and that kind of thing. And but is that my audience, the general contractor? I mean, who is that? What does that mean? There's like dozens of people in the business that you could potentially be interfacing with. But as it happens, the buyer, the people that are most likely to interface with you are the estimators and the project managers, right? So for a major general contractor, if you're a millwork company and the people who are going to say yes to you have the power to give you an opportunity, you're gonna go through the estimators, and then start getting bid invites, and then somebody's gonna, a project manager likely is gonna choose to work with you. And so what is it they're buying from you? Are, in the case of millwork, are they buying cabinets to sell to their customers? Well, maybe the general contractor is, but that person isn't. That person is not buying cabinets from you. That's not why they hired you versus somebody else. The reason they hired you is because, a few things. One is, maybe, the pricing made sense. But, if you're not just trying to be the lowest bidder, which is a real roll of the dice, by the way, if you're a project manager giving that deal out, maybe part of what that audience is buying is the fact that I know if I hired this company, they're going to provide the best experience on this project of any of the competitors. Like the hassle factor for me as a project manager is really low with them. Those guys communicate, they're on it. They're, RFIs are coming in at the right time. Everything that is supposed to be flowing communications wise is flowing. So I'm hiring them because I know that they're going to be a low hassle subcontractor for me. Another thing is just, the consistency. I know that, over the course of a long time, I don't want to have, 50,000 relationships, right? I want to have a handful of subcontractors that I know I can rely on. And, this company is one of them. I want to develop the relationship. There's always going to be ups and downs, but I know that those guys work through it. They're going to follow through. So these are the kinds of things that this audience member is thinking about. And if you know that, and you're trying to sell to an audience, you got to think through the messaging that's going to resonate, that's going to check the boxes for that person. But what do we do instead? What we do instead is we talk about all this. We provide the best millwork services in the entire Midwest, and our we have been our legacy and our it's like blah 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 blah.
Copy, cut, paste.
Yeah, but really think through what it is that's going to differentiate you. And I'm telling you, there's very few people that are going to be. Very few of your competitors are going to be zeroing in on those messages. So that's a practical example of when Assaf says know your audience and their needs. It's not just about what you make. It's about how you differentiate yourself during the process of delivering those goods and services.
If you're looking for better asset management, then you need WorkMax Assets. WorkMax Assets keeps your data stored in a central location. So as your team allocates equipment, tools, and resources, the rest of the crew is aware. Monitoring ROI has never been easier. Get WorkMax Assets now.
Well, sad. Assaf, did you have something to add to that?
I did, but I forgot what it was. I got sucked into
It's so glad, isn't it?
That's what usually happens to me. I'm the old guy on the team here.
Well, I think, the takeaways for me so far are have a plan, align those goals with who you are as an individual and what your long-term goals are, assemble a team, put tools and systems and processes in place, including software technology. And I really do love, John, what you just said. You really improved upon my thought of, the experience, that journey. When we market our software, we talk about the buyer's journey. And we kind of canvas that out and say, what does somebody go through to make a determination of our solution is going to be the one that's going to be the best for their company. And it's so much more than features and functions and buttons and cabinets and knobs and finishes. It's that experience, the no hassle factor, like you stated. This is sage advice for any company, whether they're new or 100 years old, right? Something that they could sharpen even today.
I can think of one thing it might have been that you were going to say, because sometimes you say this when we talk about this topic is you talk about as you grow and as you hit certain thresholds, like you get to 1 million, get past 1 million, things that you kind of were on top of earlier on, you're turning around estimates pretty quickly, the things start to happen. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that because it does tie into what you said about tools and being honest with yourself about what can you actually handle just in your head and out of your cell phone,
Yeah, it was something else, but there's
fair enough.
But there's I was just last week I explained to one of our customers, it's a roofing contractor, and they've been through a major growth in the last 2.5 years since they hired us to assist them. And I said there's and I've experienced that from firsthand, and then I was able to read about that and learn how to articulate it a little bit better. And then I came up with an easier way to explain that growth process, right? So a small contractor starting, reaching that $1 million, right? So I created 3 stages. And this first stage is what I call the back pocket stage. Is everything is, hey, take my credit card, bring me a receipt, right? That's the back pocket stage. That's you're hitting $1 million to $1.5 million. You can't do that anymore. But everything runs through your personal credit card, and you get the points and all that, and everything through your cell phone. And then you're hitting that $1.5 to $5 million stage. That Greg from Simple Numbers, he talks about it as the black hole, right? I call it a little bit different. I said this is the cowboy stage. This is the stage where you're gonna learn. You can't have a fully implemented system. Things will pull you around, and you're gonna address fires and emergencies, and this will shape your business as you grow. Because if you try to plan everything when you're $1 million business through $5 million, through $10 million, you will not be able to, right? You need to have some systems in place, the tools you're going to use, like I mentioned earlier, but you're not going to be able to figure out every piece and every niche. So you're going to the cowboy stage. You're going to run like crazy, but it's an important stage because once you hit the $5 million stage, that's where you get into what I call the Windows stage, the operating system. At that point, you should have enough payroll in the office, enough critical hires in critical positions that are not yourself, that you'll be able to build a plan. And this is an operating system. And this is how the business is going to work now on. Because once you hit that stage, $5-6 million, whether you do 6 million or 8 million or 10 million, you feel about the same. The business will evolve. You'll have more hires, but you're mainly going to expand sideways and not necessarily vertically. You already have estimating and sales and customer service and accounting. You already have those departments, which early on, you are all the departments. You're wearing all the hats. When you're hitting 5 million, you already have those positions. Every time you're going to bring a position in, that's where the cowboy, it's going to be different. You cannot predict how they're going to work because you're not an accountant. You're not a native salesperson. You're not a native estimator, right? You're not a superintendent, or maybe you're one of those things. So you may be really good at one, but you cannot figure out how the process will look for everything else. You can guess a little bit. That's why I call it the cowboy stage, right? And then when you hit that $5 to $6 million, that's the operating system. At that point, each department should start building their process. Those are the gears that are well set, and those are the main gears that are turning together. And those are the three stages that I kind of got a different way of explaining it. Back pocket stage, cowboy stage, operating system stage.
That's great. Such great stuff. Well, John, anything from you to kind of wrap up today's episode? Because I think we've really hit a lot of great things for people to consider. And then maybe we'll have you back next week and we'll talk about maybe some of the more culturally driven and guiding principles of running that business once you have these other things in place.
I think that's it. I think, at the end of the episode, it's always good to say that, one of the reasons our business exists is to help small businesses of any size. And we've got startups all the way up to, companies doing between $50 and $100 million in revenue in the trades. And, it's something that is difficult to navigate on your own, and there's a lot at stake. So if people want to learn more about us, they can find us at lenker.com/mobile workforce, and you can download some information, and Assaf and I will record a little, post-interview bit that you can see. But I think, in the next episode, I think we can talk a little bit more about mindset and being honest with ourselves about some key things, and kind of getting a grasp of systems and things that need to be put up in place at different stages so that you can, keep up with your responsibilities and give yourself the best probability of succeeding.
Well, great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you both on, and look forward to having another chat next week. And so thanks again, Assaf and John. You guys are fantastic, and I hope our customers will find value, but also reach out to you and maybe be able to leverage some of your services.
Thanks for having us on the show.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for joining us for the Mobile Workforce Podcast by Foundation Software. To hear more episodes, visit us at workmax.com/Mobile Workforce Podcast, or subscribe to the Mobile Workforce Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. And if you like the show, be sure to leave a 5-star review, share with your colleagues, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mobile Workforce Podcast.